So now we're in chapter 2 and we're going to look at occupancy. And this chapter is divided into two components. We're going to talk about classifications and then the load factor. And this is all about a sign you may have seen maybe when you went in a restaurant. There's a little sign posted and it basically is saying how many people are allowed to be in that building at any one time. So it's all about the safety of those people and the risk factors of the building. I'm going to go ahead and warn you there are no pretty pictures in this chapter. So hopefully though this is kind of interesting to you and you'll get to kind of understand some more of this behind the scenes research that goes into a project. So let's get started with occupancy. So occupancy classifications, first of all codes are based on the occupancy classification. Therefore, this is one of the very first things that is done in a project. Classifications have probably already been determined by the architect or somebody else working on the project by the time it reaches the interior designer, but that's not always true. So classifications are based on risk. So some of those risk factors include the concentration of occupants. So we're talking, is it a classroom? Is it a nightclub? Is it an office? How concentrated are the people using that space? Second is the characteristics of occupants. So imagine characteristics of users in, let's say, an adult assisted living facility versus a preschool versus a shopping mall. So all of those things are taken into account. Third is the potential for fire. And then 4 would be spatial characteristics, low light, again, nightclub, restaurant, fixed seating, and sound levels. And then the second part of occupancy is the load. And so basically it's just the number of people assumed to safely occupy the space or the building. So some considerations. Tenants can be classified separately. So within one building, there may be different uses. So one building may have different areas with different classifications. It's good for the project to look at current uses as well as future plans. It's based on the type of activity that's occurring, the expected number of occupants, and then anything that would be an unusual or hazardous risk. Are there people sleeping there or resting? What are the alertness levels, mobility levels? Are the occupants familiar with the space? Characteristics such as fixed seating and again the potential for spread of fire. Here's the list of occupancies. Assembly, business, educational, factory, hazardous, institutional, mercantile, residential, storage, and utility. We'll look at each one separately. So the assembly occupancy, this is a place where people gather for functions, recreation, entertainment, eating, drinking, or waiting. Typically, we're talking more than 50 people and they are unfamiliar with the space. Risk factors often include low light levels and a potential for panic. So here are 5 types of assembly spaces. Theaters with fixed seats would be A1. Spaces for food and drink consumption would be an A2. This would include restaurants, bars, banquet halls, and clubs. A3 is for worship, recreation, or amusement. So arcades, bowling alleys, churches, funeral homes, galleries, museums, libraries are all on this list. If you look at your textbook, page 57 has a complete list. A4, indoor sporting events with fixed seating for spectators. Arenas, gyms, rinks, pools, courts. And then A5 is actually for an outdoor event. So structures in amusement parks, wherever there are bleachers, grandstands, or stadiums. Now we'll look at the business occupancy. The space is used for transacting business and rendering professional services. There are low risk levels. They may have assemblies for fewer than 50 occupants. This includes offices, showrooms, banks, vets, kennels, beauty shops, secondary education, like our technical college, fire or police stations, the post office, greenhouses, medical, non-institutional type spaces, government, civic offices, and libraries. Now we have the educational occupancy. This is academics through 12th grade, so not your colleges. It also includes daycare and nurseries. Occupant of load of more than 5 for at least 12 hours per week. So that would exclude your very small in-home child care. A factory occupancy, just that, factory spaces, assembly, processing, or manufacturing. A hazardous occupancy, which granted do not frequently call for interior design services, but hazardous materials are used, may only be part of the building or may be an isolated space within a building. Institutional, this is medical, various types of care, or detained occupancy. Limited in mobility, and the International Building Code has 4 subclasses, but the NFPA refers to the area of detentional, correctional, healthcare, and daycare. So here are the 4 subcategories from the International Building Code in institutional. I-1 is housing and care of up to 16 patients on a 24-hour basis, such as alcohol and drug centers, assisted living, or group home. I-2 is 24-hour care of more than 5 individuals, so hospitals and nursing homes. I-3 is detention, jails, prisons, and I-4, care of more than 5 individuals for less than 24 hours a day, so adult or infant daycare centers. Then we have mercantile, and these are spaces that are open to the public and used for display, sale, rental of merchandise, so stores, showrooms, and malls. Now we have residential, and again notice there are 4 categories here. So basically a dwelling with sleeping accommodations. So R1 means the occupants are transient and they typically stay less than 30 days. So these are your hotel spaces. R2, somewhat permanent, apartments, dorms, extended stay hotels, and multifamily units, such as condos. R3, single family homes and duplexes, and for an R3 occupancy, you must use the International Residential Code. R4 is small residential care for 6 to 16 individuals. Then there is a storage occupancy, shelters products, merchandise, vehicles, or animals. Next is utility, just miscellaneous or unusual spaces that don't fit elsewhere will be here. And now that we've looked at each occupancy classification, we'll look at some relationships and different ways that they're combined.